Do Dollar General stores magically appear? And what did God establish? Part 2. Yesterday's Throwback Thursday edition of Morning Minutes in the Bible on An American Missionary quoted the first part of a 60-year-old article about Isaiah's prophecy in chapter 2, verses 1 through 4, on the establishment of the Lord's church, written over 700 years before it was fulfilled 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem. However, unlike thinking a new Dollar General magically appears from a pile of dirt on a corner lot, misunderstanding what God built 2,000 years ago is quite easy, though so unnecessary. So we continue with a bonus edition of Throwback Thursday on a Friday to conclude the article. What Did God Establish? By Robert F. Turner, Plain Talk Magazine, January 1964. Little Red Wagon. It seems many think of the church as something like a little red wagon. Established on Pentecost, it stood ready to roll and people could jump in and ride to heaven. But somewhere along the line, a side rail broke, an axle was bent, the tongue came loose, and finally a wheel fell away. Luther tried to put the wheel back on, but further bent the axle in his effort. Others replaced the tongue with a new but different instrument, unsuited to the purpose and function of the original tongue. Alas, the church was broken down and out of service. Then Alexander Campbell and Barton Stone determined to restore the church. They straightened the axle, replaced the tongue with an original model, repaired the side rail, and put the wheel back in place. Now people could again ride home to heaven. Have I stretched the picture? Perhaps, but only to emphasize what I believe to be an entirely erroneous conception of the church established on Pentecost. This is a denominational concept. It glorifies the party and does not properly distinguish between faithful and unfaithful people. Who are the church? The word church is a collective noun and it collects people, but not just any people. Christ's church consists of saints and faithful brethren, a people for God's own possession, Colossians 1 verse 2 and 1 Peter 2 verse 9. Of all the multitude gathered in Jerusalem, only those who gladly received his word and were baptized became members of the church, Acts 2 verse 41. Members of the church do sin, but they are expected to repent and pray God for forgiveness. Failing to do this, they are denied the fellowship of Christians, 1 Corinthians 5. A congregation of Christians who collectively no longer act in keeping with God's will is unworthy of a name and place among the churches of Christ, Revelation 2. The Lord's church consists of people identified with the truth, not just of people identified with a party. God's establishment unchanged. What God established, truth, the new covenant, never changes, 1 Peter 1 verse 23 and following. But the party, the people, could fall away, 1 Timothy 4 verses 1 and following. First, their attitude toward divine authority is altered, then their practices, then usually many years later, their terminology. Because the rule is one thing, and the people who supposedly followed the rule is another. Paul said we must not measure ourselves by ourselves, 2 Corinthians 10 verses 12 and following. One may stay with the building, stay with the preacher, stay with the elder, stay with 90% of the people, and yet leave the church which God established. In fact, this is precisely the history of denominationalism with its creed-bound people. Christians today need to restudy their conception of Christ's church. We must rededicate ourselves, not to some party, but to the Christ and to his cause. I must know the truth and obey it, regardless of the action of others, in the church or out of it. I must remember that it is the purified and cleansed church, not the party, that Christ promises to save eternally. Ephesians 5 verses 26 and 27. What God really established is firm and sure and cannot be shaken. Hebrews 10 verse 28. For more study on this subject, Plain Talk Magazine is freely available online at wordsfitlyspoken.org. Plain Talk. Bookmark it. Use it for research and additional study. Don't think the brevity of the articles leave it wanting, because you will be challenged to think. So read it for more information about the God who delivered on his promise to establish his kingdom, his church. Thank you for watching Morning Minutes in the Bible on An American Missionary on this bonus edition of Throwback Thursday. Until next time, this is James McClenny hoping you have a great day.